The grand hall of the galactic Concord hummed with the murmured conversations of a dozen species. Crystalline chandeliers, seemingly suspended by nothing but light itself, cast a gentle glow over the gathering of diplomats, merchants, and military attachés. A collection of civilizations spanning thousands of years of collective wisdom and advancement. At the far end of the hall, Ambassador Evelyn Reed sipped her drink slowly, observing the elaborate social dance of galactic politics with keen eyes. As Earth's chief diplomat to the Concord, she had spent the last 3 years learning the intricate rituals and subtle power plays that defined interstellar relations. Humans were newcomers here. Barely 4 decades had passed since first contact, and many elder species still viewed humanity with a mixture of curiosity and dismissal. Enjoying the spectacle, Ambassador? The voice came from behind her, smooth and cultured with just a hint of condescension. Admiral Forlag of the KRYLL Empire, his scaled skin gleaming under the lights, towered over her human frame. Like all KRYLL, he carried himself with the particular arrogance of a species that had dominated their sector for millennia. "Always, Admiral," Reed replied with a diplomatic smile, "though I find I'm still learning the steps to this particular dance." Indeed, Forlag's inner eyelids flickered in what Reed had come to recognize as amusement. "Your species moves so quickly. Others might counsel patience, but the KRYLL understand ambition. Your resource negotiation tomorrow. I believe we have much to discuss." Reed nodded politely, but inside her mind was racing. The KRYLL rarely initiated conversations with lesser powers, particularly not with humanity. Their empire spanned hundreds of worlds, their technology far surpassed Earth's cobbled-together systems, and their military might was second only to the ancient founding members of the Concord. This sudden interest was concerning. "I look forward to productive discussions," she replied carefully. As Forlag moved away, Reed's aide, Marcus Chun, "No, Lieutenant Daniel Park," Reed corrected herself, approached with a concerned expression. "The KRYLL delegation has been asking unusually detailed questions about our colony on Proxima B," Park whispered. "Military capabilities, resource extraction rates, transportation schedules." Reed frowned. "That doesn't bode well for tomorrow's negotiations. Alert the escort ships to maintain heightened awareness. And get me a secure channel to Earth Command. Tomorrow would prove whether her instincts were correct." The negotiations were held on Neutral Station Epsilon, a massive habitat in unclaimed space specifically designed for such meetings. Reed's small delegation sat across from the KRYLL representatives, with Forlag himself leading their team, an unprecedented move that already set Reed on edge. "The mineral rights to the Barnard Star asteroid belt have been recognized as open to claim by established Concord law," Reed stated, her voice firm. "Humanity has established mining operations in accordance with all proper protocols." Forlag's expression remained impassive, but something in his posture shifted. "Protocols established by species who understand their place in the galactic order," he replied. "The KRYLL Empire has historical interests in that sector." "Historical interests not formalized through any registered claim," Reed pointed out. "With respect, Admiral, your empire had centuries to establish such claims and chose not to do so." A subtle stillness fell across the KRYLL delegation. Reed realized she had crossed some invisible line. "You lecture me on galactic law, primate?" Forlag's voice had dropped to a dangerous register. "Your kind emerged from your mud planet mere moments ago in cosmic time. You cobble together technologies you barely understand and charge into the stars like children, claiming resources that rightfully belong to your betters." Reed maintained her composure. "We have followed every regulation established by the Concord, Admiral. If you have specific objections, there are proper channels." Forlag stood suddenly, towering over the human delegation. "The KRYLL Empire determines what is proper. It seems your species requires education on your place in the hierarchy." Before Reed could respond, Forlag activated his communicator. "Commander, execute Operation Disciplinary Measure. The humans require correction." Reed's blood ran cold. "Admiral, Whatever you're planning is already done, Forlag interrupted with cruel satisfaction. Your escort vessels have been neutralized. Consider yourself a guest of the KRYLL Empire until your species learns proper deference. Through the station's viewport, Reed watched in horror as the flash of weapons fire illuminated the darkness of space. Her escort ships, caught completely by surprise, were being systematically destroyed by KRYLL warships that had apparently been waiting in stealth. Formation. This is an act of war, she whispered, shock giving way to anger. The Concord will. The Concord will recognize the necessity of putting upstart species in their place, Forlag said dismissively. A minor incident in the grand scheme. Your Earth will submit, apologize, and life will continue, with humans understanding their proper role. As KRYLL soldiers entered the chamber to take the human delegation into custody, Reed looked Forlag directly in the eyes. You have made a terrible mistake, Admiral. You don't understand what you've just done. Forlag merely laughed. What I understand, Ambassador, is that I've just taught a lesson to a species that needed to learn it. What he couldn't possibly comprehend was that he had just declared war on the most adaptable, resourceful, and lethal species the galaxy had yet encountered. The news reached Earth 12 hours later. The destruction of a diplomatic escort and the taking of Ambassador Reed shattered the morning calm of the United Earth Government headquarters in Geneva. Emergency sessions were called, military commands activated, and within hours, the planet that had known centuries of internal conflict found itself unifying with breathtaking speed. In a strategic command center beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Miguel Santos slammed his fist on the conference table. This is a direct violation of every diplomatic protocol in the Concord. We need to demand immediate intervention. The Concord representatives are expressing concern, but little else, replied Foreign Secretary Amara Okafor, her voice tight with controlled fury. Several elder species have suggested we should accept this as a learning experience and offer concessions to secure the ambassador's return. Admiral Tran Quoc Tuan, who had been silently studying tactical displays, finally spoke. His voice was quiet but carried to every corner of the room. They believe we will behave as other young species have historically done. Submit, apologize, accept a diminished status. They are applying patterns that have worked for millennia. And what do you suggest instead, Admiral? President Shun. No, President Kapoor asked, his face grave. That we show them why those patterns do not apply to humanity, Tran replied. I request emergency authority to implement Contingency Prometheus. The room fell silent. Contingency Prometheus had been developed shortly after first contact, when humanity realized just how outmatched they were technologically. It was a worst-case scenario plan, never meant to be implemented except in existential emergencies. The KRYLL believe they've swatted an annoyance, Tran continued. They expect submission or perhaps a futile, disorganized response they can further punish. They do not expect what we are capable of when truly threatened. President Kapoor looked around the table, meeting the eyes of each person present. The KRYLL have killed our people and taken our ambassador. They've shown contempt, not just for our sovereignty, but for the very principles of the Concord we joined in good faith. Are we in agreement? One by one, the leaders of Earth nodded. Admiral Tran, you have full operational authority. God help us all. Within the Imperial Palace on KRYLR, Emperor Sazeth received Admiral Forlag's report with satisfaction. The massive reptilian monarch reclined on his basking throne, heat lamps maintaining the perfect temperature for KRYLL comfort. The primates offered no significant resistance, he asked, inner eyelids blinking slowly. None worthy of mention, Your Magnificence, Forlag replied with a slight bow. Their vessels were primitive and their tactics predictable. We've intercepted transmissions indicating considerable confusion and panic on their homeworld. Good. Have they made any official response? A laughable ultimatum demanding the return of their ambassador and formal apologies. They've given us 48 galactic standard hours to comply. The Emperor made a sound somewhere between a hiss and a chuckle. And what do our intelligence services predict? High Inquisitor Mach Tor stepped forward, his ceremonial armor gleaming. Historical patterns suggest they will bluster, then negotiate for the best terms they can get. Their military assets are minimal, their technology inferior, and their species lacks unity. They spent most of their history fighting amongst themselves. Typical of primitive species, the Emperor observed. Sent a response dismissing their ultimatum. Make it clear that we expect resource concessions and formal acknowledgement of KRYL primacy in the disputed sectors. It shall be done, magnificence, Forlag said, bowing deeply before departing. None of them noticed the small maintenance drone in the corner of the vast chamber, its optical sensors recording everything. None of them realized that its communication systems had been compromised 3 months earlier by a seemingly innocuous software update from a trading partner. And none of them could have imagined that the drone was now transmitting directly to a stealth communications relay hidden in the outer reaches of the KRYL home system. Information was humanity's first weapon in a war the KRYL didn't yet realize had begun. On Earth, the response to the KRYL dismissal was swift and all-encompassing. Within days, the planet's economy began a transformation not seen since the world wars of the previous century. Military production facilities operated at maximum capacity. Civilian shipyards were requisitioned for military conversion projects. Research restrictions on artificial intelligence military applications, put in place after the AI conflicts decades earlier, were provisionally lifted. Admiral Tran established his headquarters in a hardened facility beneath the Pacific Ocean. From there, he coordinated with military leaders globally, implementing Phase 1 of Contingency Prometheus, asymmetric engagement. We cannot match them ship for ship, he explained to his assembled command staff. So we don't try. We fight as humans have always fought when outnumbered and outgunned. We fight dirty. The first strike came at a remote KRYL communications relay on the edge of their territory. A small human vessel, registered as a civilian mining ship, drifted into the system apparently damaged. The KRYL security detachment, following standard protocol, approached to investigate. They found no crew aboard, only a sophisticated computer virus that jumped to their systems the moment they established connection, and a series of surprisingly powerful explosives hidden throughout the hull. The relay station went dark instantly, its destruction initially attributed to a tragic accident involving an unstable reactor on a mining vessel. 3 days later, a KRYL military supply depot experienced a catastrophic life support failure. 5 similar incidents followed within a week, each apparently isolated, each attributed to equipment malfunction or operator error. In the grand scheme of the KRYL empire, these were minor annoyances, but they were only the beginning. On KRYLR, Emperor Sazeth was becoming irritated. These incidents cannot all be coincidental, he hissed to his assembled advisors. What are your explanations? Admiral Forlag shifted uncomfortably. Some evidence suggests possible human involvement, magnificence. Their technological capabilities may be more advanced in certain areas than we initially assessed. You told me they were primitive, the Emperor snapped. Now you suggest they can penetrate our security and sabotage Imperial facilities? It appears they excel at adaptation and unconventional approaches, High Inquisitor Mach Tor interjected smoothly. However, these are merely desperate acts of a species lashing out before inevitable submission. Our intelligence suggests they are attempting to marshal a more conventional military response as well. A small battle group has been observed assembling in their home system. The Emperor's inner eyelids narrowed. Destroy it. Show them the consequence of defiance. Forlag bowed. I will lead the expedition personally, magnificence. A significant show of force should end this quickly. The KRYL battle fleet that entered the Sol system 2 weeks later was impressive by any standard. 12 capital ships accompanied by dozens of smaller vessels, all featuring technology centuries beyond Earth's indigenous capabilities. Admiral Forlag commanded from his flagship, the Imperial Dominator, confident in swift victory. What they encountered instead was a carefully orchestrated trap. The small Earth defense fleet they detected was indeed present, but it was merely the visible component of a multi-layered defense system that had been under development since humanity's first encounters with alien technology. As the KRYLL fleet approached Earth orbit, seemingly uncontested except for the Token Defense Force, automated systems hidden in the asteroid belt activated. Thousands of small, stealthy drones, many built using reverse-engineered alien technology, swarmed toward the KRYLL formation. Each carried a payload of high-yield explosives or electromagnetic pulse generators. Simultaneously, defense platforms disguised as civilian space stations revealed concealed weapon systems, while mining installations throughout the system activated military-grade shields and weapons they were never supposed to possess. The KRYLL response was predictable. They concentrated firepower on the visible Earth fleet while dispatching smaller units to deal with what they perceived as minor threats. It was exactly what Admiral Tran had anticipated. Now, he ordered from his command center. The Earth fleet, instead of engaging directly, executed a complex series of maneuvers, drawing KRYLL vessels into carefully planned kill zones. Meanwhile, the drone swarms ignored standard military targets, instead targeting sensors, communication arrays, and engine exhaust ports, weak points identified through years of careful intelligence gathering. Forlag watched in growing horror as his carefully organized formation began to disintegrate under attacks coming from seemingly everywhere. "This is impossible," he snarled to his second-in-command. Their military capability was assessed as minimal. They concealed their true capabilities, the officer replied, voice tight with stress. "We're receiving reports of unconventional attack methodologies across the fleet. 3 destroyers have already gone dark." Before Forlag could respond, the tactical officer called out, "New contacts. Hundreds of small vessels launching from Earth's moon." These were Earth's secret weapons, attack craft specifically designed to exploit weaknesses in KRYLL defenses, crewed by AI systems that could react faster than organic pilots. They had been hidden in underground lunar bases, waiting for precisely this moment. The battle lasted less than 6 hours. When it ended, more than half of Forlag's fleet was destroyed or disabled. The admiral himself barely escaped with his flagship and 4 other capital ships, all heavily damaged. It was the worst defeat the KRYLL Empire had suffered in over 300 years. As the remnants of the KRYLL Expeditionary Force limped home, humanity's counterattack was already beginning. Small, stealthy vessels, some military, some converted civilian ships, were dispatched to key KRYLL systems. Their missions varied. Some gathered intelligence. Others established contact with species subjugated by the KRYLL, and some deployed sophisticated sabotage packages against military and industrial targets. On Earth, military production accelerated. Technologies that had been theoretical or experimental were rushed into production. The entire asteroid belt became a massive shipyard, with automated factories producing components for a fleet that would have been unimaginable months earlier. Most concerning of all for the KRYLL was humanity's biological warfare program. Earth scientists, intimately familiar with the endless war against microorganisms that had defined their planet's evolutionary history, quickly identified vulnerabilities in KRYLL biology. Within weeks, they had engineered viruses that targeted specific genetic sequences unique to KRYLL physiology. These were not designed to kill, at least not immediately. Instead, they caused symptoms like reduced cognitive function, compromised immune response, and degraded vision, all devastating for a military force. The viruses were deployed through seemingly innocuous trade goods and contaminated supply chains, spreading through KRYLL military bases and colonies before anyone realized the threat existed. On KRYLR, Emperor Sazeth was in a dangerous mood. The defeat at Seoul had shaken the Empire's confidence, and reports of growing unrest in subjugated territories were increasingly concerning. "How is this possible?" he demanded of his assembled advisors, his massive tail lashing dangerously. You assured me these primates were insignificant. Admiral Forlag, still bearing injuries from the battle, lowered his head. We underestimated them. Magnificence. They concealed their true capabilities and studied our weaknesses meticulously. And now they attack us everywhere at once, the Emperor raged. Our outposts report sabotage. Our military commanders fall ill to mysterious ailments, and subject species whisper about human agents promising support for rebellion. We have taken countermeasures, Magnificence, High Inquisitor Moktor assured him. We've increased security protocols, implemented biological screening, and reinforced garrisons on potentially rebellious worlds. It is not enough. The Emperor's tail smashed a decorative column. I want their homeworld destroyed. Prepare the Imperial fleet for a full-scale assault on the Sol system. We will crush these upstarts with overwhelming force. In the shadows of the throne room, a junior communications officer named Zexkar listened carefully. Once dismissed, he hurried to his quarters, encrypted a message containing the Emperor's plans, and transmitted it through channels that would eventually reach human intelligence services. Zexkar was one of a growing number of KRYLL who questioned the wisdom of this war, and who had been quietly contacted by human agents promising a different future for the Empire. The seeds of internal division, planted carefully by human intelligence operations, were beginning to sprout within the KRYLL hierarchy itself. Ambassador Evelyn Reed had spent 3 months in KRYLL captivity. Her cell was comfortable enough. The KRYLL understood the diplomatic value of keeping her alive and relatively well, but isolation and uncertainty had taken their toll. She had no news from Earth, no way to know what response or capture had triggered. When the door to her cell slid open unexpectedly, she was startled to see not her usual KRYLL guards, but a human woman in a form-fitting combat suit, her face partially concealed by tactical gear. Ambassador Reed, the woman said crisply. I'm Colonel Eva Rostova, Earth Special Forces. We're getting you out. Reed stood shakily. How? How did you find me? We've had assets in place for weeks, mapping this facility, Rostova replied, handing Reed a protective vest. But we need to move quickly. Our diversion won't last long. As if on cue, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Reed followed Rostova into the corridor, where 4 more human operatives waited, weapons ready. The KRYLL think we're here to sabotage their command center, Rostova explained as they moved swiftly through the corridors. By the time they realize our true objective, we'll be gone. What's happening with the war? Reed asked, struggling to keep pace. The last I heard. Later, Ambassador, Rostova cut her off. Right now, we focus on extraction. They encountered sporadic resistance, but the Special Forces team moved with practiced efficiency, using non-lethal methods where possible. Reed was surprised by their restraint, and by the advanced technology they wielded, far beyond what she knew Earth possessed officially. They reached a small hangar bay where a craft of unfamiliar design waited, its engines already cycling. KRYLL design, modified for our use, Rostova explained, noting Reed's confusion. We've become quite adept at repurposing their technology. As they lifted off, Reed caught a glimpse of the facility they were leaving, a massive prison complex on what appeared to be a barren moon. In the distance, a KRYLL military base was visible, portions of it engulfed in flames, the diversion Rostova had mentioned. Only when they were safely away, cloaking technology hiding them from KRYLL sensors, did Reed ask again, the war. Tell me what's happened. Rostova removed her tactical helmet, revealing a face lined with exhaustion and determination. The KRYLL attacked our system. We were ready. They lost badly. Now we're taking the fight to them. Asymmetric warfare, primarily. We can't match them ship for ship, but we found other ways to fight. Casualties? Rostova's expression darkened. High on both sides. But the KRYLL are discovering that humans are uniquely dangerous when cornered. We've united in ways they never anticipated, and we're using every advantage we can find or create. Reed processed this information slowly. In the Concord, the other species, watching carefully. Some are secretly supporting us, species with grievances against the KRYLL. Others are terrified by what they're seeing. Rostova's mouth curved in a grim smile. Turns out humans have a reputation now. The species that fought back against the KRYLL and is actually winning. We need to end this, Reed said firmly, before it becomes total war. That's part of why we extracted you, Rostova replied. You're not just a diplomatic asset. You're a symbol. And right now, we need symbols as much as soldiers. As their ship accelerated toward a rendezvous point, Reed wondered what kind of galaxy would emerge from this conflict, and what role humanity would play in its future. The liberation of Ambassador Reed coincided with the launch of the KRYLL Empire's massive counteroffensive. The Imperial fleet, comprising nearly 60% of the Empire's military might, departed KRYLL with Emperor Sazeth himself aboard the new super dreadnought, Imperial Dominance. Their destination, the Sol System and the final destruction of humanity. What they didn't know was that this movement had been anticipated. Human intelligence assets had provided advance warning, and Admiral Tran had prepared accordingly. The Imperial fleet never reached Sol. Midway through their journey, as they traveled through a supposedly secure hyperspace corridor, they encountered a series of quantum disruption fields, technology the KRYLL believed impossible for humans to develop. The disruption fields forced the fleet back into normal space, scattered and disoriented. Waiting for them was Earth Fleet Prime, humanity's newly constructed armada, built in the asteroid belt factories and crewed by a combination of human personnel and advanced AI systems. The ships incorporated reverse-engineered alien technology alongside human innovations, creating weapon systems the KRYLL had never encountered. The battle that followed was unlike anything in recent galactic history. The KRYLL fought with discipline and determination, but found themselves facing an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. Human ships maneuvered in patterns that made no sense by conventional military doctrine, but proved devastatingly effective. AI-controlled drone swarms overwhelmed KRYLL point defenses, while specialized EMP weapons targeted the KRYLL's neural interface command systems. Emperor Sazeth, watching his fleet disintegrate around him, made a desperate decision. Prepare the World Breaker, he commanded. Target their homeworld. The World Breaker was an ancient weapon of terrifying power, officially banned by Concord treaties. It could destabilize a planet's core, literally breaking a world apart. The KRYLL had maintained a small arsenal in secret, intended as a last resort deterrent. Now, Sazeth was prepared to use it against Earth, regardless of consequences. What the Emperor didn't know was that Admiral Forlag, increasingly convinced the war was unwinnable, had secretly contacted human forces. Perhaps seeking to save his own position, perhaps genuinely concerned for his species' future, he provided critical information about the World Breaker weapons, including their location aboard the Imperial Dominance. As the Super Dreadnought prepared to deploy the forbidden weapon, a small team of human special forces, led again by Colonel Rostova, executed a daring boarding action. Using technology that temporarily disrupted KRYLL internal sensors, they infiltrated the massive vessel's weapons control center. The fighting was brutal in close quarters. Rostova lost half her team before they secured the World Breaker control systems. With KRYLL reinforcements closing in, she faced an impossible choice. There was no time to disable the weapons safely. Override the targeting systems, she ordered her surviving team members. Set it to self-destruct. The resulting explosion tore the Imperial Dominance apart from within. Emperor Sazeth was among the casualties, along with most of the Empire's high command. Colonel Rostova and her team never made it to their extraction point. With the Emperor dead and their fleet in ruins, the KRYLL military hierarchy fragmented. Some commanders fought on, while others sought terms. The empire that had stood for millennia began to collapse under both external pressure and internal division. On Earth, the news of victory was met with complex emotions. The threat had been neutralized, but the cost had been tremendous. Hundreds of thousands of lives lost, resources depleted, Ethical boundaries crossed in the name of survival. Admiral Tran, now leading an interim military government for the human colonies, faced a question that would define humanity's place in the galaxy. What kind of peace would they impose? The formal surrender of the KRYLL Empire took place aboard the Earth flagship Resilience, 6 months after the destruction of the Imperial dominance. Admiral Tran represented Earth, while a coalition of KRYLL military and civilian leaders represented what remained of their empire. The terms were severe, but not genocidal. Complete demilitarization of the KRYLL Empire, with monitoring by Concord observers. War reparations, structured to allow economic recovery over time. The formation of a transitional government that included representatives from previously subjugated species. Trial of war criminals, including the surviving architects of the initial attack. Territorial concessions, and the establishment of buffer zones. Some human military leaders had advocated for harsher measures, even suggesting the KRYLL homeworld be placed under permanent occupation. Admiral Tran had rejected these proposals. "We fought this war because they failed to understand what humans are," he told the Earth Council. "If we respond with unnecessary cruelty, we prove that their initial assessment of us as savages was correct. Our strength is not just in our ability to fight, but in our capacity for mercy when it serves justice." Ambassador Reed, who had played a crucial role in the peace negotiations, found herself in an unexpectedly powerful position. Species across the Concord now sought Earth's favor, respect having replaced their previous dismissal. The balance of power in galactic politics had shifted fundamentally. 5 years later, Reed stood on an observation platform overlooking a public square on KRYLR. The capital was being rebuilt, and below her, KRYLL children played in the shadow of a memorial to those lost in what was now called the Awakening War. "They're recovering faster than expected," noted the voice beside her. Dr. Miranda Osei, head of the Reconstruction Advisory Team, studied the scene with professional interest. "They're adaptable," Reed replied, "perhaps more similar to us than either side realized." The new KRYLL government was still finding its way, balancing ancient traditions with new realities. The former empire was now the KRYLL Confederation, its member worlds, including former subject planets, having equal representation. Human advisors remained, but their role was diminishing as the KRYLL established new institutions. "The Concord delegation arrives tomorrow," Osei said. "I understand they're finalizing the treaty revisions." Reed nodded. The Galactic Concord itself had been transformed by the war. Humanity, once a footnote in galactic affairs, now held a seat on the High Council. Their proven capability for both destruction and restraint had earned them a new status, not just as a species to be respected, but one to be somewhat feared. "They'll be watching us for generations," Reed mused. "All of them, wondering if we're going to be the monsters they fear or the partners they hope for." "And which will we be?" Osei asked. Reed watched a KRYLL child help a smaller companion who had fallen. A simple act of kindness in a world rebuilding from war. "That's the question that will define us," she replied. "Not our capacity for violence. Any species can destroy. What makes humans truly dangerous is our ability to choose not to use that capacity, even when we have every justification." She turned from the window, her expression resolute. The KRYLL thought they were teaching us our place in the galaxy. Instead, they learned that humanity's place is whatever we decide it to be. That's a lesson the entire Concord now understands. As she prepared to meet the Concord delegation, Reed carried with her the weight of that understanding. Humanity had proven itself the most lethal species alive, not because they fought better than anyone else, but because they fought in ways no one could predict, adapted faster than anyone could counter, and showed mercy when no one expected it. The galaxy would never underestimate them again.